Now, to see what else is making news at the moment, we're talking to the freelance journalist Kai Chow. Kai, welcome.
Good morning, guys.
Talk an issue of censorship in a way, in that we've had many outspoken columnists and so on, both on TV and online and in newspapers, of course. Now, there's an example in the New York Times about a racist tweet. How many people have got into trouble by their tweets? Let's remove President Trump from this conversation at the point, but of course there was Roseanne Barr and the like and so on. So just talk us through what's happened.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. So Sarah Jeong is a Korean-American tech journalist and quite respected, does some great tech journalism work, and she's just been appointed to the New York Times editorial board. However, her past has come back to haunt her in terms of her social media past. She has a series of tweets during the 2016 presidential election where she really tweeted some pretty graphic comments about basically white people. So that included things like, how do I put this? Beep white women, cancel white people, white men are bull beep, Dunbar beeping white people, marking up the internet with their opinions like dogs beeping on a fire hydrant. You can imagine the word beep was substituted with something else. Now, these kind of sweeping comments obviously have antagonized a lot of people. A lot of conservative critics of the New York Times have taken the opportunity to criticize them and point out, well, look, you had a previous tech journalist, Quinn Norton, and she was fired from your editorial board because she used the N-word and used slurs against gay people. And so Sarah Jeong, however, has stayed on the New York Times editorial board. The Times has issued a statement saying that Sarah was harassed for being Asian American and chose to respond by imitating the rhetoric of her harassers. And look, I think it's an interesting, and they've said, look, she now realises this was not the right way of doing things, and that's why we're keeping her on board. So putting aside, though, the fact that obviously many people see there's a potential double standard there in the way that it was handled, I just think, look, I suppose coming from someone who has experienced racism myself as a Chinese Australian, I just don't think that Sarah Jeong's approach is a very constructive way of dealing with these things. And I think it's particularly important for people not to understand that not all Chinese approach racism in this way. The reason I mention it is because of the furor, Sarah Jeong has now probably become one of the most famous Asian Americans in America at the moment. And so many people may attribute, the kind of comments she made. They think, oh, is that how a lot of Asians think about things? And it's not. Like, I think most Asians really do come to America, most migrants come to America and Australia to make a better life. We come in because we like white people, generally speaking. And so, I think that to me is what stands out. There's a huge responsibility on the small number of Asians, I think, that do make it into media. And obviously one of the ways, of course, that you can deal with this, of course, is to have a wider range of different ethnic opinions on media to show that it's not just, kind of certain kind of woke, angry types that necessarily typify all of us.
Let's stick with a Chinese theme, I guess. If you travel to China, you won't be seeing images of Winnie the Pooh very much. Why?
Isn't it so? I love Winnie the Pooh.
Me too.
And however, it appears that the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, is not so much a fan. A lot of Chinese bloggers have decided that there's a certain resemblance between President Xi and... I have to admit, I didn't see a huge amount of it myself.
Well, for a start, he doesn't have his ears on top of his head.
That's true.
The problem is, since I've seen this report, now when I see President Xi, now all I can see is Winnie the Pooh. So it's worked in reverse in a way.
Sorry, I can't see it.
Well, that perhaps, Andrew, but if you trust me, if you do a little bit of Google searching, you'll find some Chinese bloggers have found images of Xi where he's in extremely similar poses to Winnie the Pooh. So, for example, when he's with Obama, and so basically they've got a photo of Winnie and Tigger, and they've got Obama next to Xi, and so and so that's basically what's happening.
I guess it's not the point, is it, whether there's a similarity. It's the fact that he has taken offence, or the Communist Party officials have taken offence. And so what have they done? They've actually...
Yeah, so basically, all of these images are in China, because China's ability to censor the internet is probably unparalleled. I mean, you're talking about a country of 1.5 billion people, but they have enormous censorship resources at their disposal, and they've used it to basically wipe all of these images from the various bloggers that have posted this image. So look, it's a reminder, I think, of the kind of censorship that that China does have. And it, look, I mean, in a way, look, I understand from President Xi's point of view, I wouldn't necessarily want that comparison. And I suppose if you're Chinese, you think, okay, I like Winnie the Pooh. Do I want him running a country of 1.5 billion people? Probably not, right? And so, but nevertheless, it does show you like how censorious China still is, even though it has become, so progressive and much more open to the world in recent times. And again, look, I suppose it's another reminder that's why many Asians have come to the West to escape that kind of really strict type of regime. And I guess another thing that puts the Sarah Jeong tweets into perspective.
Now, this next story gives me a bit of anxiety because it's about someone taking my phone away from me.
Oh, hang on. So you're pro this, are you, Joe?
No, I'm not pro having my phone taken away from me, no.
Well, it's about having a nice meal that you
Yes.
paid a lot of money for in comfort without being annoyed.
Yes.
Tell us what the story is.
Okay, so basically there's a restaurant in Sydney and they've basically decided that when patrons come in, they're going to be asked to put their mobile phones in a locker. They'll be given a key, and so at the end of the evening, they can retrieve the phone. Now, Joe, surely you're not telling me that when you're having a beautiful meal that you don't take out your phone and start...
Absolutely not, but it's in my bag next to me,
Yes.
in close distance, in case, what if an emergency happens?
Well, actually, no,
That old chestnut.
but no, that is a good point.
Yes.
For those people who have kids,
Yeah.
particularly those being babysat when you're going out to a meal,
Yes.
you want your phone close by.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, does that mean those people can't go to the restaurant?
Look, I am pretty sure that the restaurant is not going to rigidly enforce it. There's going to be a gentle request, and they'll rely on people's shame, I
They'll probably
suppose.
judge you if you don't
That's
give it to
right. It's like, no, I'd like to hang on to my phone, and you can imagine, even if you make it past that particular gauntlet, imagine if you were to dare take your phone out to try to take a photo of your meal, then the shame
that's
factor would
right.
increase. But look, I understand that. I suppose, though, look, I'll be honest. If someone offered that to me, I know my willpower is terrible. I don't have kids or any legitimate reason for using my phone other than to take photos of food. And so therefore I probably would say, please take it.
Okay,
Right?
yes, yeah.
Because I understand I have very little willpower when it comes to these things.
I mean, it goes to the broader question of where you can use your phones and how intrusive it is, particularly on public transport. And I know, like in some cities, they have trains with carriages that are quiet carriages.
Yes.
Not a lot of people obey that particular rule, do
I had
they?
an experience the other day, in fact.
Well, that's people that speak very loudly
Yes.
and very candidly on
Sandra's
their
great.
phone, and the whole carriage partakes, or at least listens in because they don't have a
We
choice.
need a rule book, phone etiquette.
Or perhaps one that isn't necessarily socially enforced by, maybe one that's not so much enforced by the restaurant. But what about this? What about a digital camera? Because then people can say, I can take photos, because sometimes you're at a romantic event, you're with a group, you're at a party. You want to capture the moment, but you don't want people chatting and swiping through things otherwise. So maybe you take your photo with an old school digital camera, you put it away, and then, hey, you've captured the moment.
Did you really, but 20 years ago, before, mobile phones, you were ubiquitous, did you really want to take your camera everywhere? No?
No, that's true. That's
point.
true. Yeah, I don't expect many people would take advantage of that particular option. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, guys.